So now that we kind of got the basics of passive and active rigid bodies, it's time to kind of get them to work in different ways. And one of the coolest ways of doing it is working with nCloths. So what an nCloth is basically changing an object into a cloth-like, pretty much a cloth-like object. Great for clothes, flags, things like that, animating, modeling. You can use it for a whole bunch of different things. So let's get into an example for it. So I'm just going to create a simple plane right here. I'm going to create a nice cylinder as well. And what we're going to do is I'm going to create a very simple basic flagpole. So all I'm doing is creating this right here. This should work nicely. And I'll create a nice plane. And let us just rotate that 90 degrees. And I'm just going to make it somewhat flag shaped. Now, one of the things you do want to know is nCloths do work with geometry of your object. So the more geometry you have, the better it's going to look, but it will bog it down a bit. So I'm going to change my plane, in this case, just about 20 by 20. It's going to give me more than enough geometry for this. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to start with the pole and the ground, and I'm going to go to my nCloth, and I'm going to create a passive collider. So that's going to make it basically a passive rigid body. Nothing's going to interact with it with gravity or anything like that. And for my cloth, my flag right here, I'm going to create an nCloth. Pretty simple. So the difference with this is nCloths have gravity added to them automatically. So if I hit play right now, it should just go and drop to the ground as a cloth. Works pretty nice. But the problem with this is I want this to be a flag, and flags don't really drop off the pole like that. So let's try to make this into an actual flag. What I'm going to do is I'm going to go to vertex mode, and I'm going to select all the vertices right at the edge right here where I want it to attach to the pole. And we're going to use what's called an nConstraint. So what an nConstraint does is it basically goes in and says, well, in this case I'm going to do a transform constraint. And what that's going to do is it's basically going to let me control these points right here, and since I'm not doing anything with them, they're going to stay in place. So if I hit play right now, my flag will drop down and droop, as if there was no wind. Speaking of which, we could create wind for our flag. And to do that, what we'll do is I'm just going to select my nCloth right here. I'm going to go into fields and solvers, and I'm going to create air. I'm going to go through the option box so you can see what we have options for. So we have wind, wake, and fan. I'm going to do a wind one right here just for basic demonstrations. I'm going to hit create, and now I have a nice wind. So there are a couple of things we'll need to do to this little wind node, but let's show what it does. So if I hit play right now, you can see it's blowing this way, which is nice. So let's just take a look at our options. So we have the translate, rotate, and scale, which you already should be familiar with. Magnitude is how strong it's going to be. So at a magnitude 5, it's going to blow it pretty much like that. But if I raise it to, let's just say 50, and press play again, it should be affecting it a lot more, as if it was a lot windier. So let's just bring that back to like a 5. Most of the stuff you're not going to really need to work with, but we have different things like direction. So right now, my direction is Z, meaning if we look over here, it's going for positive Z, so it's going this way. If I wanted to, I could change this to 0 and then change my direction to positive X if I want to go towards the right by typing in 1 right there. And if I start this over from the beginning, the wind should be coming in from this side right here and coming out that way. I do need to increase my magnitude a bit just to show it. So I'm just going to type in a random number. That way you kind of get a better idea on how this is flowing. So let's go even higher than that. Let's try 50 and see if that's going to give us a nice wind. That's pretty good. It is still drooping a bit, but we can always increase the power of it. But that's pretty much all you really need to work with. You could increase the things like the speed and all that stuff. So if I wanted to, let's just say, bring this to a 1 and increase it up, it's going to go max power or max speed. And as you can see, it kind of flows in a weirder way. But that's pretty much how you can create nCloths. And it works really, really well. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to just start a new scene just to show another example. I'm going to do the exact same thing as before. I'm going to create a plane, but this time I'm going to create a cube just like this. Pretty basic. And what I'm going to end up doing with this is I'm going to show you another use for this. So I'm going to create this circle right here, this disk. Let's add some more geometry to it. So let's increase it to 6 would be more than enough. I'm going to create, well, turn this cube and this plane into passive colliders. And let's just say this cube was a table and I wanted to make a tablecloth for it. So I'm just going to use this round one. You could use any object. So in this case, I'm going to go and I'm going to create an nCloth out of that plane. And now if I hit play, it should drop and land on my cube. And that's a super fast way of making a very organic looking dynamic tablecloth. So one of the things that this works really well for is if you're just using this for modeling purposes, you could go into edit, delete by type, and then hit history. And that way it will remove all those dynamics that we added to it. So it'll just kind of consider this as its own model as if I modeled it. And to make something as organic looking and natural like this, it's super difficult to do by hand. So this is a great way of modeling stuff like that. We can go in and turn other objects into nCloths if you have different ideas on working with them, but it's kind of pick and choose, and you gotta kind of mess with it a bit, because if you take a sphere like that and make it into a cloth, you end up having these weird type of things going on. So just keep that in mind. But nCloths are super useful. You can use them for clothes. I don't usually recommend it because it is going to be very tasking on your computer to render that out, because it is simulating it in real time. So just keep that in mind and have fun with it. You can create a lot of really cool things. So thanks again.